Hello, everybody. David here, and welcome. Here, we discuss real stories by real people. I hope all of you are doing well and fine today. We're gonna dive right into this. This is actually the continuation of the previous two stories. Update: I hurt my husband in an argument, and now he won't talk to me. Original post: my husband, 32 male, and I, 31 female, had been together for 7 years and married for 5. We have a 3.5-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. His parents passed away when he was 20. To describe it shortly, he despises his father to this day. His father ruined his promising athletic career. He was once ranked in the top 10 nationally at his sport, and forced him to focus on school. My husband was accepted to multiple Ivy League schools, and his father refused to pay tuition as well. His father was a control freak, physically abusive towards him, and refused to entertain any opposing opinions. My husband vowed to himself to never be like his father and to always encourage his future kids' interests and opportunities. He has always been an amazing husband and father to me and our kids. He makes spending time with us a priority, keeps our relationship fun and exciting, and just always makes me feel beautiful and appreciated. We've been going through a bit of a rough patch for a few weeks, and we were arguing about something that wasn't even worth arguing about in hindsight. He said that he was done arguing and walked away mid-conversation. I blurted out, "You're just like your father." Boy, that was the wrong thing to say. I think as soon as I said that, I immediately started apologizing, ran to her, and tried to hug him. He refused my hug, looked at me, shook his head, and walked out the door. A whole day passed, and I hadn't seen or heard from him. I called, texted, and left many voicemails, apologizing and asking him to please come home. I reached out to his friends, and they had not heard from him either. He walked in drunk at 4 a.m. the next night and collapsed on our couch. I heard him come in and ran downstairs to see him. He was slurring his words and was saying things like, "I'm not like him, and why would you say that?" I just held him in my arms all night long and apologized many times. It's been another 2 days. My husband refuses to talk or look at me. He's not even eating anything I make. I've tried talking to him and apologizing. He just looks at me and says, "It's just another thing I have to live with," and walks away from wherever I am. I have no idea how to fix this. I didn't mean to hurt him, but the fact that he feels betrayed by the one person he should feel supported and uplifted by, me, he is absolutely the love of my life, and it hurts me knowing that I caused him to feel this pain. Please advise on what I can do or say to fix this. Now for the comments before reading the update. Great, in order to win a stupid argument, you had to give him a low blow using that. What was a thing that he only confided to a person he trusted and loved? By what it looks like, to win an effing argument, you must be proud of yourself. It will really be worth it in the long run. You will see. You are the a-hole. This person says, "Damn, I wasn't ready to read that. My bio dad was a piece of trash. Part of what ended a 6-year relationship for me was my girlfriend saying to me, 'What you said to your husband, I didn't end things because I was angry. I ended it because for the next 6 months I tried to make it work. I couldn't think about anything other than, does she really think that I'm like him?' I just couldn't trust what she thought of me anymore. Any small disagreement we had made me worry she'd say it again. I don't know if it's fixable, but I guess here's what I've learned from the situation. I didn't want an apology. I needed to believe that she didn't mean it, not even a little. I couldn't be with someone who saw me like that or could say that to me. It just broke my trust, and we couldn't fix it. He needs to believe deep down that you didn't mean it. He also needs to understand why you said it and why he can't trust. You won't say next time. I don't know what you can do to that, but I wish you the best of luck. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Also, yes, the a-hole. This is beyond. Yes, you're the a-hole. You're a POS. There's nothing you can do. This is up to him. And it looks like he's contemplating just living with you, not being able to trust you. It goes without saying that you should never stab him in the heart again. But even if you don't, he won't feel completely safe around you again. He doesn't feel betrayed, he is betrayed. Unless the argument was around balancing your kid's academic and athletic pursuits, or something else related to his father's actions, the fact that you chose to attack him this way shows you've been holding on to it, intending to hurt him with it to get your way. What other punishments do you have lined up should he disagree with you on something and speak his mind? This person says, "Are you seriously that effing stupid? You lack any sort of control over your emotions and the words that come out of your mouth. You literally lied to his face just to hurt him. And for what? Because you couldn't handle the possibility that maybe, just maybe, you were being obnoxious and couldn't handle the fact that he didn't want to talk to you anymore. Is your apology just as impulsive as your low blows? Because if so, they don't mean shit, they are just more lies. He is absolutely the love of my life, and it hurts me knowing that I caused him to feel this pain. Please advise what I can do or say to fix this." Figure it out yourself, dickhead. We don't know him, but you do. You should have known that this likely will not last any longer because you've ingrained into his mind that he's like his father, that will subconsciously eat away at him and likely cause some esteem issues and passive demeanors in the future. You ruined a good man, and now your kids are going to have to suffer because of your piss-poor actions and lack of rationale. This person says, "Yes, the a-hole. You didn't mean to hurt him. That's why you said what you said. So the first thing you need to do is come to terms with that, then try to heal from that place. If you can't be honest with why you said it, then any apology coming from a place of dishonesty is worthless. Second is, while his reaction is valid, this level of feeling defeated is telling me one thing: this isn't the first time he's felt this way with you. Not to this level of hurt, sure, but clearly he has been working very hard to break cycles and rise above, and you are not appreciating his attempts, asking for more, being dismissive. What are you not telling us? My husband and I are both breaking cycles of our own, and we are both vicious when it comes to how we argue, and we have both said things that hurt to the bone, but we always come back because we both know everything else is, and the work we do is appreciated. What have you done to break him down to this being the reason he's defeated?" This person says, "A lot of good comments here already. I think you need to also realize that you broke his trust. He trusted you, and you used it to hurt him because you wanted to hurt him. I certainly believe that you regret it and are genuinely remorseful, but you need to explore your need to cut as low as you could to hurt him as much as you could. One of the many reasons he's not coming back is he is realizing he can't never trust you again, and for many or most that's a relationship a deal breaker." Oh my gosh, she's getting grilled, rightfully so, I guess. Now for the update. Update. I got some comments and some messages trashing my husband for walking away from the argument that started all of this, and saying he is like his father. I'm not going to say what the argument was about here, but it was pointless, and walking away from it was the mature thing to do. He is the best husband and father anyone could ask for. Even when he wasn't talking to me, he was still spending time with and taking care of the kids. Think whatever you want of me, I deserve it, but leave him out of it. On to the actual update. My husband came home after work the next day and bought takeout for dinner. We had dinner as a family for the first time in a few days, and put the kids to bed together. I asked if we could talk. I apologized and admitted that I was tired of all the arguments we were having lately, and in the heat of the moment, I wanted to hurt him and said what would hurt the most. He said that he knows he is nothing like his father, and wondered why I thought he was. I promised that I don't believe that at all, and told him all the great things he does for me and our children. I told him that I would see a therapist to figure out what made me say what I did, and to make sure it never happened again. The conversation lasted about an hour and a half, and ended with him telling me that it would take some time, but we would be okay as long as I never compared him to his father again. We kissed and slept together for the first time since the incident. In the next few days, there was still a certain coldness about him. He was still happy to spend time with the kids, but was still somewhat cold with me. I wrote him a letter telling him how much I loved and appreciated him and promised to never hurt him again and slipped it into his lunch bag. He came home with flowers for me that day. Our normal vibe was somewhat returned, and it looks like we will be good going forward. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for no longer being close to my daughter after she ignored her mother and my wife when she was very ill? Original post. My daughter is 19, still very young but old enough to know what she did wrong. 5 years ago, my wife, her biological mother, began to exhibit very strange behavior. She would say weird things, make impulsive decisions, and act strange. She and my daughter would often clash. Now, my daughter always was a daddy's girl, but she was still close with her mother. I honestly thought my wife was going through a midlife crisis and dealing with the pressures of working while raising a teen, and we had a come-to-Jesus talk. About 6 months after the start of that behavior, my wife ended up in a really bad accident. When they were performing emergency surgery, they found a ball-sized tumor pressing on her brain, which was the cause of her initial behavior. My wife ended up having to relearn everything from walking to talking. She was still reeling from the effects of the accident and the brain tumor, and was mentally and physically disabled for a while. Our daughter refused to be seen in public with my wife. She hated the mess of the wheelchair and her mother's condition. She would also just ignore her mother and speak to me all the time, sometimes even about her. She saw my wife as a burden and would complain to people to the point where the school called me. At the time, I was just struggling to get by, and I couldn't alienate my daughter. My wife needed a lot of care. My daughter was in a difficult stage of her life, and I couldn't abandon her in it. When my daughter went off to college, I was sad, but also somewhat relieved. My wife still needs a wheelchair sometimes, and she has difficulty with some things, but she has honestly improved so much. It really solidified our love for each other and our belief in our marriage. My daughter's coming back for summer break after exams. I don't know why, but I feel uncomfortable with her staying for this long. I feel like the sense of closeness that I had with her evaporated when she treated her own mother callously. I don't know what to do. My wife is very excited to have her daughter come, but I don't want to see her heartbroken. I've tried getting over it and talking with my therapist, but I just can't feel emotionally close with my daughter, and I'm sure that she'll notice. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I don't know where any of your assumptions about my wife are coming from. Her mother was never abusive in any way, including mentally or emotionally. When I said my wife did or said strange things, she regressed in some ways to a child, which was exacerbated by the accident. For example, she would go on and on about a show that she watched, she couldn't tell a story, and she would spit out food that she didn't like. My daughter would never have been put in an abusive situation. Now for the update. Mother's Day was terrible. I don't know why I'm updating this. Maybe it's for the few people who can sympathize. A lot of the prior comments made untrue, horrible accusations about my wife. My wife was never abusive or even mean, not in any state. It makes it so much harder to understand why her daughter would be so cold to her own mother. My wife's mental state before the accident had regressed into childlike behavior, which is concerning, but not the cause of my daughter's coldness. My wife would spit food out back into her plate, bluntly say it tasted bad, and wipe her nose with her sleeve like a child. I made the error of thinking she was having a midlife crisis because she bought an expensive dress because it was soft. She would forget to do things, her responsibilities. Mother and daughter clashed because she would tell stories with no beginning and end, just rambling. She would ask the same questions over and over. She would promise to pick her up or bring something and forget. These are things that would annoy a teenage girl. The tumor was concentrated in the back of her head. When she got into the car accident, it made everything worse. She needed to relearn everything. She was still disabled. We had high expectations for our daughter, but she set them higher for herself. She had a dream school where she wanted to go since she was 12. It meant that I had to do some chauffeuring to so many activities throughout high school and sacrifice, a lot, to make sure that she got the opportunities that she wanted. It meant leaving my disabled wife in a long-term care facility to hopefully recover. It was COVID, so there were long stretches where we didn't visit her. She was there for too long. I never should have left her there. When she came home, my wife was still largely nonverbal and wheelchair-bound. She needed help with everything from eating to going to the bathroom. I earned a little as a caregiver on top of my regular job. My daughter was so cruel and cold to her mother at that time. She wasn't a young kid or even a young teen anymore. She was never expected and never did take care of her mother, so it wasn't caregiver burnout. She would hate if her mother came outside with her and would later blame it on the wheelchair, saying it was bulky and attracted attention. She would ignore her mother and move away to distance herself physically. I ended up getting a call from the school because a classmate had overheard what she said about her mother and reported it as ableism. I don't know what she said. All I know is that it was very cruel to her mother. I had her in individual therapy, and we did therapy as father and daughter. It was her choice to stop. My daughter ended up getting into her dream college. They had an accepted students' weekend, and she demanded that her mother stay home, even though parents were invited. By that time, my wife had made leaps and bounds in progress and was disappointed to stay home. I went and tried to be a proud father. At least she let her mother go to graduation. My daughter came home a few days ago. Her exams were earlier. She informed us that she earned a research position with a professor for the summer. My wife was overjoyed, writing a card all on her own about how proud she was and how she wished that she could see her daughter grow into an accomplished young woman. My daughter looked sick with guilt. I know what that looks like. On Mother's Day, I made a comment that she couldn't ignore her mother today. She told me to stop saying that. I made another comment about how proud her mother was of her and how much she loved her. I was doing it on purpose. It ended up with her saying she regretted what she did. I always had my suspicions. I interrogated her until she tearfully admitted that she hated what her mother had turned into and that she hit her mother once. She was ashamed to be around her because of what people thought. We got into a shouting match and she yelled at me that I was so focused on everyone else's behavior because I regretted my own. It's true in a lot of ways. Because of COVID, there were limited visiting hours, but I still didn't visit as much as I should have. I left my wife in a facility to focus on her daughter, but also so that it would be easier for me. There are no siblings or grandparents to help. I didn't visit as much because I hated how much my wife would sob when I had to leave. I started feeling guiltier when I read a news article about a nurse being sentenced for assaulting a woman in a coma. I thought about my wife. She was nonverbal, had limited short-term memory, and was wheelchair-bound. I wouldn't know what would happen. I tried to convince myself that it was fine, but all I did was find more and more news articles about abuse at care facilities. I would have nightmares. I pulled my wife out. I took months of work. I finally got her home. She was taken care of, but not like I would have. There were a few knots in her hair, bruises, and sores. I won't lie, the care was brutal. Now I had to juggle taking care of my wife and making sure my daughter was supported and able to reach her dreams. And it was hard seeing my wife like that. She was accomplished and intelligent, and now she couldn't do a puzzle, eat on her own, or go to the bathroom by herself. There was a huge learning curve, and they assigned a nurse to come see my wife every few days. My wife is so sweet. I attend a caregiver support group, and I feel guilty because my wife doesn't have the fits of temper, the rage, or the depression that others did. I felt guilty for being tired. Some had it a lot harder than I did. She got better, and over time, it was almost like she was almost back to her old self, and she never lost love for either of us. It hurts that she blames herself for how her daughter treated her. Maybe I shouldn't have let my daughter focus on prestige and appearance so much. Maybe I should have realized the signs early on and exposed her to others. My daughter and I aren't speaking. My wife just wanted a happy family. I'm looking for therapy for us as a family. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for leaving without explanation after mother-in-law pretended not to hear me? I, 32, female, have a 7-month-old daughter with my husband, 34, male. My country does ensure a long maternity leave for up to 2 years. However, I am self-employed and cannot afford to lose my clients, so I try to work while my daughter is sleeping and during the weekends. Lately, she's been teething, so I'm operating on little to no sleep. I have an issue with my mother-in-law. She does what she wants despite people asking her not to, and then says oops or denies doing it, things like that. It was annoying before the baby, but after she was born, it has become insufferable. My husband talked to her and set boundaries, so she stopped doing that when my husband is present, but she was still doing it when it was only me in the room. So, we agreed she cannot visit when my husband is not at home, and my husband is not allowed to leave me alone with her. Because of these boundaries, we did not see them for a month and a half. They live 2 hours away, and we did not find a mutually good time. They finally came over last Sunday. 20 minutes into the visit, my father-in-law wanted to see a lawnmower that had broken down, so my husband went to the backyard with him, leaving me, the baby, and mother-in-law inside. She's drinking coffee and eating cake. She sits next to my daughter on her playmat and tries to feed her some of her cake. I immediately tell her, no, she can't have that. Mother-in-law pretends not to hear me and proceeds to put her spoon to my daughter's closed mouth. I repeat, stop doing that, she can't have cake yet, and definitely not from your spoon. Still, she pretends not to hear me. I repeat it again, still nothing, and now there's cake on my baby's face, and she's fussing. So I grabbed my daughter and went to my husband and father-in-law, subtly gesturing for him to come back inside. After about 5 minutes, mother-in-law decided to go outside too and was approaching me and the baby. I gestured to my husband again, and he made an annoyed face. I had no energy to deal with any of this, so I stood up, went inside, grabbed my baby bag and car keys, and went to the car without saying a word. Mother-in-law asked me where I was going, and I ignored her. I drove to my sister's, which is about a 15-minute drive. There were some missed calls from my husband, so I texted him where we were and that we'd be back in the evening. It was time for my daughter's nap, and she fell asleep breastfeeding, so my sister told me to go to sleep too. After she woke up and had her milk, my sister took her and told me to go back to sleep. I slept 3 hours in total, and my phone was on silent, so my husband's calls were ignored, and apparently his parents left disappointed and mother-in-law cried. My husband is furious I did this. We're still fighting about it. He can't believe I was so rude and took the baby away when his parents came to see her after such a long time. He's angry that I couldn't have waited a few minutes so that he could finish talking about the lawnmower. I told him I'm too exhausted to deal with this shit. He left me alone with mother-in-law, despite our agreement, be it only 10 minutes, so I laughed. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Your mother-in-law should respect your boundaries, especially when it's your baby, and your husband should have had your back on that. I do understand that it must be uncomfortable and hurt him seeing his mother cry and be upset, but then he should talk to her about it instead of making you the bad person. The only thing I think you did wrong was that you didn't pick up your daughter after the first time you said it and mother-in-law didn't listen. Maybe that would have made things go more smoothly, but then again, it shouldn't really be necessary. I do think that it's important that you stand for your boundaries, and your husband should support you on that. This needs to be the new standard. If you don't listen to the baby's mother about what's best for the baby, you immediately lose access to the baby. That is how it's going to be, and will be the only way that she might listen. When you're a parent, you need to learn to enforce consequences. This is a great place to start. Not the a-hole, but you have a husband problem as much as a mother-in-law problem. So, mother-in-law was ignoring your instructions about your child, so you went to your husband so he could deal with his mother, except a lawnmower, which would still be there after the conversation, was more important than his agitated wife and child, and instead of checking to see if you were okay, he had to go at it before making his mother cry. You need to have a serious talk with your husband about how much he is actually supporting you with your child and with his mother. When you have that conversation, do not let him distract you with, "But they were upset. Mother-in-law behaved inappropriately, he ignored you, so you left." Their behavior created the issue. You let him know where you were and when you'd be back. Do not let him turn any of this back on you. He and his mother have a lot to apologize for. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you. Hello, everybody. David here. Welcome. Here we share true stories from real people. Today, starting out with the first story, Phone Call Destroyed Me, plus updates, original story. Hello fellow users, I have created this throwaway account so friends don't find this post. I, 38 male, just found out my girlfriend, 36 female, of 5 years cheated on me, and I found out in the worst way. Just some background information on me. I've never been married, nor do I have any kids. It's not that I don't want either, life just hasn't had those plans for me yet, I guess. Anyway, on to the story. Friday after work, I left to go on a weekend trip with the guys to one of my buddies' cabins on the lake. Nothing too crazy, fishing, drinking, games, just good old fun. Usually we do these trips about every 3 months to get time to ourselves and give our significant others a break from us. I usually stay through the entire weekend and just leave from there to go to work on Monday morning. However, this weekend I left my laptop in the office room and forgot to grab it. So around 4 p.m., I started to head home. Figured I'd be there by 6 and let's call her Rachel, wouldn't have eaten by then. So I call in and order at her favorite Italian place, stopped by and picked it up and headed to the house. I walked in and everything seemed normal. I could hear Rachel laughing in the kitchen, so I figured I'd just walk in and surprise her. As I got closer, I started to overhear the conversations that she was having on the phone, and in an instant my life was shattered. I assumed that she was talking to her sister or maybe one of her friends, but the conversation basically went like this. "Last night was just amazing. He was such a considerate lover. Hoth, I'm telling you, I have never had anything like it. Hoth. We met on Tinder and he took me out last night. By the time we made it through the door, we barely made it to the sofa. Hoth. Oh God, big. Like twice as big as, inserts my name. Hoth. I'll definitely be taking him for a test drive again." After that line, I just dropped the food on the floor. Rachel heard it and turned around. By that time, I had already had tears welling up in my eyes. She hung up the phone and tried to get to me, but I just pushed her off. Went up to the office, grabbed my laptop and left. Rachel had been hysterically texting and calling the past 4 days, and I haven't answered one of those. I'm staying at a motel a couple of towns over, so I doubt she will be able to find me. My buddies and mom have called as Rachel has frantically been trying to locate me, but I've assured everyone I'm okay and there is nothing to worry about. My life has been ruined by a stupid phone call. I really thought this was the girl that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. I'm an only child and my mom keeps reminding me she wants grandkids. I'd planned on proposing this year on the 4th of July, as it would be our 6-year anniversary. I've already got the ring and my buddy and his wife already know about the plan, as they were the ones who set us up and hosted the 4th cookouts. Any advice from you here would be appreciated. This is the first time I've dealt with infidelity in any relationship. I'm really just broken at this point. Do I contact Rachel? Should I hear her out? After that phone call, the thought of her just makes me sick to my stomach. Tay, for anyone who reaches out. My opinion is that it's unforgivable if someone cheats on you, because once a cheater, always a cheater. Now for some additional comments. This person says one thing that would matter to me, if I found myself in this scenario, is remorse, regret, and shame. She was bragging about it to whoever, and laughing, also admitting that she would be doing it again. She can call all she wants hysterically crying, it doesn't change the fact that she cheated, bragged, laughed, and was going to do it again, and only showed any sort of remorse once she was caught. Sometimes the universe shows you who someone is not the person they pretend to be, but who they are when they believe no one is watching. The universe provided you with that. You saw and heard the true Rachel in that moment, and I couldn't agree more so on this. Opie says made this post during lunch. While thank you all so much for the kind words and replies. I'm going to take a lot of your advice and go to the walk-in clinic tomorrow for an STD test. As for her, I don't know what I'm going to do. I understand that ghosting her is a common theme on here, but I don't think that's the kind of person I am. I want some answers, and like most of you, I assume this wasn't the first time. I just kind of want acknowledgement of the fact. My mom knows what's going on, as I just filled her in before this post, and my 3 buddies are coming to my hotel tonight. I told them not to share anything due to Rachel being close with 2 of the 3 wives. I'll share with them tonight and figure out how to proceed going forward. There will be no reconciliation. Like a lot of you said, those words keep replaying over and over in my head. This is done. As for the house we are renting currently, I was planning on buying this fall after we would have been engaged. Our lease runs out in October, so I will pay my half until then, as my name is on the lease with her. As for the ring, I don't know what the F I'm going to do with it. If I can, I'll return it. Again, thanks for all the kind words. Sorry I'm not individually replying to posts. Right now I'm just not in the right mind space to reply over and over. But your kind words mean a lot. Thank you all. This person says, do you know which friend of hers she was talking to? I wonder if it was one of your friend's wives. If it was, I hope he knows what kind of stuff his wife is okay with supporting, and I really hope none of your friends knew about this and didn't tell you. Hopefully it wasn't someone you knew and were close to, as that would be another portrayal. I guess you will find out sooner or later when you see who supports you after you tell your friends the truth. Now on to the updates. Update 1. Hello everyone. First off, I would like to thank everyone for their kind words. I've had a very stressful week, and while I did not feel up to replying to anyone's posts, I want you all to know that I read them and your words helps me through the week. This has been a devastating event for me, and each and every one of you that commented or reached out through chat brightened my day just a tiny bit. With that said, here is the most recent update. Last Friday night, after my buddies got to the hotel, they explained what I heard on the phone call. All 3 of them were stunned, to say the least. They asked if I saw any signs of this, and to be honest, I really hadn't. I said I didn't know what I was going to do. I informed one of my buddies that the proposal was off, and given the circumstances, he completely understood. One thing I had my buddies do when they left their houses is turn off their tracking, in case their significant others were checking up and getting back to Rachel. I know Rachel isn't close with one of the wives, but at this point I didn't want to take any chances. That night we spent the night at the hotel bar, and I tailspun pretty hard, shot after shot after shot. It wasn't pretty. My buddies were getting calls all night from their significant others, asking where they were, and to their credit, they stood their ground and backed me up, just saying that we were safe and not to worry. One asked to speak with me after assuming that where they were, but I didn't want to talk to her. She kept saying Rachel is worried and just wants me to come home. I just told my buddy to deal with it, and I'll fill them in another time. I spent most of the night hitting on the bartender, which I'm not proud of, and a couple of girls who were traveling for work. The next day I thanked them all for spending time with me, and they took off back home. This week, I had one of my buddies scope out the house we were renting, as it was on his way to work, and he gets to work after Rachel and I would have already left for the day. Rachel had taken Monday and Tuesday off, but went back to work on Wednesday. As soon as he informed me of this, I went to the house and started packing as much stuff as I could. The house wasn't a mess and dishes were in the sink, clothes laying everywhere, trash was full of takeout and ordered food. It took me about 3.5 hours to get all my crap out. Before I left, I cleaned up for Rachel as a final gesture. That afternoon and evening, I got flooded by Rachel with calls and texts after she realized that I'd came home and gotten all my things. So for now, I'm staying at my mother's house until I can find a place of my own this fall. I spoke with the landlord, and without Rachel's signature, he won't remove me from the lease, meaning I will have to cover my half of it until October. My mom has said that I can stay with her until then, at which point I will try to find a new place. I know, a 38-year-old moving back in with his mother, how amazing life has treated me. I finally contacted Rachel on Thursday and told her we could meet up at a local bar and grill downtown Friday evening. I told her one of my buddies would be attending to make sure everything was on the up and up. She complained for a few minutes, saying she wanted me to come home and talk with her so we could move past this, but I told her if she wanted to see me, this is how it was going to be. Eventually, she agreed. So Friday night, Rachel shows up after my buddy and I had been there for about an hour. I had already eaten and had a couple of drinks to calm me down. We sat down and she wanted to make small talk, asking about me and blah blah blah. I cut the garbage off. I told her I had a list of questions. Immediately her eyes welled up. I asked her, how long has this been going on for? She swore this was the first and only time. I told her to cut off the shit. I said that there was no change we were ever getting back together, so just tell me the truth so I can have my closure and move on with my life. She stuck to her guns for a few minutes, but then, as most of you predicted, she came clean. Every time I went on those trips for the past 2 years, she thought I was going to cheat on her, so she was having her fun too. This set me off. I told her she was using this as an effing excuse to just sleep around. I then asked who she was talking on the phone with, but she refused to give me an answer for this. I asked if they use condoms, and she said sometimes. I said she's lucky I got an STD test because I'm clean, so she doesn't have to worry about getting one unless her most recent horse didn't use one. Finally, after I left, I told her about my plans. July 4th proposal, I showed her the ring and told her that I was going to propose at her friend's party because that was where they had introduced us. It was around here that she just started crying. She begged for another chance. I told her that I will always love her, but we are over with. So yeah, she's been messaging me all day, but I'm going to block her here soon. So I'm just sitting here eating alone, B-dubs, and drinking beer while watching the fights. Hopefully Poirier wins, but I'm doubting it. My life is a train wreck. Anyway, thanks guys for listening. I don't know if I'll update again. Update 2. Hello there, Redditors. I just want to thank each of you for the kind words. It means a lot to me. A few things have happened the last day, so I figured I'd fill you in. Nothing too exciting, but nonetheless, here it is. Rachel is no longer invited to the 4th cookout, so I am free and clear, and don't need to worry about any confrontation with her. If you remember in my last post, while at the bar, one of the wives was trying to talk to me. She is the wife that hosts the 4th cookout. Apparently, Rachel had told her that she had only cheated once, and it was a huge mistake, and that's why she was trying to get me to talk things out with her. When I spoke with her this past Tuesday, I let her know the whole truth. She immediately called Rachel, who confirmed my line of events was livid, and started yelling at her, and told her it would be best if she didn't show up to the event on the 4th because I was going to be there, and frankly, what she did to me was vile and disgusting. She then asked me to forgive her, and said she had no idea. I explained it wasn't her fault and she had nothing to ask for forgiveness for. We were both sold on a lie by someone we cared about. As for who was on the phone with her, I could only imagine it was her sister. The two wives who are best friends with her remain solid that they had no idea Rachel was doing this, as apparently on the Saturday evening, while we were away, they would have had a girls' night at my house until about 11 p.m. and talk about the typical girl garbage and drink wine. The one who isn't even friends with her but particularly in these events confirmed it. The thing that makes me think it was her sister is I've attempted to reach out to her 3 times now, and I've gotten no text back, no call back, nothing. Her mother has called and said that she's upset about the breakup and asked if there's anything that they can do to change my mind, but I told her that's just not happening. I went back to work on Monday after taking the week off, so I'm back to my normal routine now. No more booze in the near future. My liver will thank me for that. This community has helped me a lot, and I personally want to thank each and every one of you for all of it. I don't know if I'll update this account again, as it seems that this is the end of the situation. By the way, Rachel has been blocked on all platforms, so right now, she has no way to contact me. Cookout host said that she isn't doing good right now, and she told me that before I explained what really happened, but as is life, I'm not doing good either, but I'm moving on and putting all this behind me. Thanks again, community. I'll rock. Story 2. Update. I, a 28 female, am pregnant with her second baby. 28 male husband wants me to abort or divorce me. Original story. My husband and I have been married for almost 2 years. We have a 15-month-old and we plan to have this second baby. Our relationship has always been up and down, but recently when we were doing good we talked about having a second child close in age to our first, and now I'm 10 weeks pregnant. About 2 weeks ago, we got into a major argument, which turned into him sleeping in a hotel every night, and not coming home to see our son or talk to me. His mom thinks that I should get an abortion, which I think has been part of his whole shift, not wanting this baby anymore, because he was really excited about it prior to her saying that. He's been so mean and avoidant, and I just don't know how to get through to him. I've already had 2 abortions prior to our marriage with him, and on top of all this he wants a divorce, or he wants me to sign a post-nup. I found out he's in Vegas right now with his buddy, and he told me he isn't wearing his wedding ring. He's been following random girls on Instagram. It's just too much. From the beginning I've been very excited to have this baby, and really didn't even consider an abortion until now that infidelity is in question, and just coming to realize how horrible he's been. I've been praying over him and our marriage every day, and it just seems like it gets worse and worse. I'm starting to question my faith, honestly. I just don't know what to do. We've had one face-to-face conversation this entire time where we could talk about her feelings, but other than that he continues to stonewall me, gaslight me into thinking our friends and family don't like me, gaslight me into thinking all this is my fault, and is coercing me into an abortion and a divorce that I don't want. Please help. Now for the update. My pregnancy. I went last Friday to have another ultrasound, and the baby keeps measuring smaller. My due date keeps getting pushed back, so I'm trying to get a hold of my OB to make a more well-rounded decision. See what she thinks about the low development. I would like to keep the baby still, but last night my husband texted me with a frightening text. That be effing careful, because your next husband might kill you with the games you play. I just cannot even wrap my mind around that statement. My marriage. He came to Palm Springs last weekend, where I'm staying with my mom for the time being. He spent a few hours with her son, and we were able to talk. It seems like he is just very embarrassed that all our friends and family know that he's been gone in hotels for weeks on end, and he is definitely taking advantage of me, trying to be nice and offer an olive branch. He sent me videos of him filling out divorce papers, saying he was going for full custody. But I haven't been served, so who knows if he will actually go through with it. I would just be done with this guy. He is not worth it. Post-nup. He keeps saying the reason why he wants me to sign a post-nup is because we have a commercial real estate brokerage that he founded in 2022, and I've been doing all the marketing for until I stepped away and became a stay-at-home mother. I still do social here and there, help him get marketing materials ordered and designed for a convention we had last spring. We recently did a rebrand last winter that I took charge of. I've supported him from the beginning, and although I'm not the founding broker, I do feel like I've been on this journey with him as a business partner and a wife. This business is our livelihood. Our friends and family work for us. We have about 20 employees and sold $250 million in total sales volume the first year, and it's essentially doubled or more every year. He says he doesn't want me to get half of the company because the company is his, and he says, even if we divorce now, he would still take 100% of the company because California is a community property state, and we would have to be married for at least 5 years for me to get half of the business in the divorce. So I'm not sure honestly if it seems like there's something he isn't telling me because he only brings this post-nup up when we are arguing and he's threatening to divorce me. Thank you all for all the advice, everyone. I know it's hard with a limited information and only my POV. I would go to a lawyer is what I would do. Story 3. Me 32 female, husband 33 male, is maybe cheating with a student 18 female. What do I do? I'm freaking out right now. My partner is a high school math teacher. He has been teaching now for a decade now, and generally has been praised by students, parents, other teachers and admins for how he does his job. We've been together for 7 years. We got married in 2023. I've never worried about him being interested in any of his students. We've even talked about teacher-student relationships, and he has never expressed anything other than disgust and how it's an abuse of power even if the student is an adult. He has never been called out for being inappropriate that I know of. Never engaged with students over the weekend or summer unless at school or related, but even then all contact is through school email or with the parents. He generally refers to his students as his kids and actively keeps a distance from developing too close of a relationship because he is young and attractive and other male teachers recommended he do so. Okay, so here's what happened. Around March, we were at the movie theater one evening, and I noticed a gaggle of girls staring and pointing. I notified my partner, assuming that they were his students, and he told me I was right. We did not go over to say anything or hi. We have seen his students before out and about, and he says hi on a case-by-case basis but typically doesn't initiate, and they did not come to us, but I noticed the rest of the girls playfully shoving one girl with lots of whispers, and the girl was staring at my husband sheepishly. I immediately thought that she probably had a crush and honestly thought nothing of it after until last weekend. We were celebrating Canada Day at a barbecue with family, and my husband was pretty wasted. At one point he went to the bathroom and didn't come back for a long time. I was worried he was getting sick, so I checked in on him. When I knocked and said it was me, he said he was okay and would be out but didn't unlock the door. He stayed in the bathroom for another 10 minutes. Super unusual for him, but it could have been anything. Later that night I woke up around 3 and he wasn't in bed. Worried again, I got up and found him on his phone in the living room. This is also unusual. When I asked what he was doing, he was definitely surprised and hit his phone screen. He said he couldn't sleep and didn't want to wake me up by watching videos next to me in bed. We both went back to sleep together. The next morning he was hungover and slept in. I went through his phone. I have never not had a reason to trust him, so I have never gone through his phone. I found nothing of interest except for the Snapchat app. He used to use Snapchat, but from what I knew hadn't been in years. I honestly assumed nothing finding the app and figured I was reading too much into things. Last night I saw a Snapchat notification pop up on his phone while we were watching TV. It was out of the corner of my eye, but the top logo is too recognizable to mistake. My heart effing dropped, because knowing he was logged out last week means he is definitely using it secretly. I pretended like I didn't notice, and a couple minutes later he got up to take a long poop. I cried while he was in the bathroom. Shortly afterwards I said I was going to bed early, and he stayed up without me. He's on summer break. When I got up for work he was still passed out. I went on his phone and found no Snapchat app. It was then that I knew something was shady for sure, and when I looked up Snapchat on the home screen, it was there, just hidden on a folder of apps disguised as cooking and workout apps. He had not logged out of Snapchat when I opened it. There was only one conversation with a real human, and it was a girl. There was no evidence of conversation between them, because for those who don't know, Snapchat deletes previous messages for good. I was ready to confront him for cheating, but basically zero evidence, but decided to keep snipping for something concrete. In that same disguised folder, I found out that he had OnlyFans downloaded. The only content creator he was subscribed to had the same username as the woman on Snapchat, but it's his effing student. The one from the theater who was blushing. I've never clocked a face so fast. I am 100% certain. We make fun of OnlyFans simps all the time, so I was already disgusted, but I actually threw up when I found this. I was scared I was going to wake him and genuinely didn't know what to do, so I put his phone back and left for work. At work, I did some sleuthing and was able to find the girl's Instagram and Twitter accounts. She's 18, and from grad photos I can tell with certainty that she attended my husband's school. The same OnlyFans link was in her Twitter bio. He has texted me normally throughout the day, and I have not responded to any, but to tell him I have to go to my parents tonight, but in reality I am still at work because I don't know what to do. The reality is that this is effed up, but she has graduated, so this now is just the same as any old affair. I don't even know if she was in any of his classes. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do next. Lawyer? Should I ask my husband and see what he says? Should I ask her? Edit to add, does anybody know how to and if he can tell when an app was first downloaded? That's all for today. If you're enjoying the story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you. Hello, everybody. David here. Welcome. Here we share true stories from real people. Today, starting out with the first story. I cheated on my husband and now he's seeing another woman. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to cheat on my husband. James and I had been together for almost 10 years, and I loved him more than anything. But then I met Mark at work, and things just clicked. It started off innocent enough, some flirtatious banter, lingering looks. But before I knew it, we were having an affair. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. The thrill, the excitement, the passion, it was intoxicating. But the guilt was eating me alive. I had to come clean to James. I'll never forget the look on his face when I told him. He just crumpled. Like someone had knocked the wind out of him. There was no anger, no yelling. Just this deep, soul-crushing sadness. That was almost worse than if he'd screamed at me. He just sat there, staring at me with these haunted eyes, as if he didn't even recognize me anymore. And then the tears started. Great, heaving sobs that shook his entire body. It was like someone had ripped his heart out of his chest. I'd never felt lower than I did in that moment. Seeing the man I loved in such agonizing pain, and knowing that I was the one who caused it, I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. I would have given anything to take it all back, to erase the hurt I'd caused. But it was too late for that. The damage was done. And as I watched James break down in front of me, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. After that horrible night when I confessed everything to James, I was determined to do whatever it took to save our marriage. I couldn't bear the thought of losing him, not after all we'd been through together. So I decided to become the perfect wife. I started cooking all of James's favorite meals, his mom's famous meatloaf, homemade apple pie, you name it. I left little love notes for him everywhere, in his lunchbox, on the bathroom mirror, tucked into his sock drawer. I even went out and bought a bunch of sexy lingerie, hoping to reignite that spark between us. Every morning before work, I made sure his coffee was piping hot and his lunch was packed with all the snacks he liked. When he got home at night, I had a home-cooked meal waiting for him on the table. I tried to anticipate his every need, his every desire. I just wanted him to see how much I still loved him, how committed I was to making things right between us. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to be enough. Sure, James would thank me for the meals or give me a tight smile when he found one of my notes. But there was this distance in his eyes, this wall that I couldn't seem to break through no matter how hard I tried. He stopped telling me he loved me. He'd just nod whenever I said it, like he was acknowledging a fact rather than returning a sentiment. Our intimacy became almost non-existent, just the occasional peck on the cheek or awkward hug. It was like he was just going through the motions, like our marriage had become this obligation that he was grudgingly enduring rather than something he cherished. And that realization hurt more than I can describe. I started to wonder if all my efforts were for nothing, if the betrayal of my affair had irreparably damaged the foundation of our relationship. Or maybe I was doing too much, trying too hard, and it was just pushing James further away. I felt so lost and alone, even with the man I love right there beside me. The distance between James and I only seemed to grow wider as the weeks went by. I was trying so hard to bridge that gap, to rekindle what we'd lost, but it felt like I was the only one putting in any effort. Whenever I cooked his favorite meal or surprised him with a little gift, he'd just give me a half-hearted thanks and go back to whatever he was doing. It was like the gestures didn't even register with him anymore. And intimacy? Forget about it. Any attempt I made to get physically close to him was met with this awkward shifting away, like he couldn't stand for our bodies to touch. He shied away from my kisses, my hugs, like my affection was something to be endured rather than enjoyed. It got to the point where I was the one initiating every single interaction between us. If I didn't make the first move, if I didn't put myself out there emotionally, we might as well have been strangers living under the same roof. I missed the way things used to be, when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, when a simple look from across the room could set my heart racing. Now, there was just a nothing. This vast, empty chasm separating us that I didn't know how to cross. James had completely shut me out, emotionally and physically. It was like some vital piece of him had gone missing in the aftermath of my betrayal, and no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to find a way to bring it back. I yearned for just a shred of the intimacy we used to share, a genuine smile, an affectionate touch, anything to make me feel like we still had a chance at reconnecting. But James just retreated further and further into himself, leaving me stranded on the other side, desperate and alone. As the weeks went by, James started coming home later and later from work. At first, it was just an hour or two past his usual time. Then it became 3, 4, sometimes even 5 hours late. He'd walk through the door looking exhausted, his suit rumpled and his tie askew. Dinner would be stone cold on the table, and he'd just mumble an apology before heading straight upstairs to bed. I tried not to read too much into it at first. His job was demanding, I knew that. Maybe he was just swamped with a big project or working overtime to make some extra money. But the little voice in the back of my mind wouldn't shut up, whispering all sorts of worst-case scenarios. Was he staying late intentionally to avoid being home with me? Had he found someone else just like I had? The thought made me physically ill, but I couldn't shake the suspicion. Especially when he started being so secretive about his work, dodging my questions or changing the subject whenever I asked about his day. I'd text him, asking when he thought he'd be home, and his replies would be vague and evasive. My mind ran wild with all the possibilities, each one more painful than the last. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. Some nights I'd lie awake for hours, my heart pounding with anxiety as I stared at the clock, waiting and wondering where he was and who he was with. Other times, I'd cry myself to sleep, haunted by visions of James in another woman's arms. I knew I had no right to be suspicious after what I'd done. I was the one who had shattered our trust and betrayed our marriage vows. But that knowledge did nothing to temper the storm of doubt and fear raging inside me. I was a tangled mess of guilt, paranoia, and dread, slowly being torn apart from the inside out. One night, I was in the kitchen cleaning up from dinner when his phone started ringing. Without even thinking, I picked it up, ready to take a message for him. But it wasn't a coworker or client on the other end of the line. It was a woman's voice, bright and cheery, followed by this unmistakable burst of laughter. My heart just dropped into my stomach. I felt like I couldn't breathe. All the old insecurities and fears came rushing back in an instant. Was James, could he be? No, I refused to believe it. Not after everything we'd been through, not after all my efforts to make things right. When James finally got home around midnight, I was waiting up for him, his phone clutched in my white knuckle grip. As soon as he walked through the door, I demanded to know who the woman on the phone was. James admitted that yes, he had been talking to another woman, some young assistant at his office. He swore up and down that it was strictly platonic, that he would never cheat. But he also confessed that he'd been confiding in her, venting about all the problems in our relationship. Part of me was relieved that it wasn't physical, but another part felt even more gutted. Like I didn't even have a partner to turn to anymore about the most important things in my life. He found someone else to open up to, someone who wasn't me. I don't know which hurt more in that moment, the possibility of him betraying me the same way I had him, or the reality that he was already pulling away emotionally. All I knew was that overwhelming feeling of dread settling into the pit of my stomach, making me wonder if I'd already lost him for good. After all my efforts to make things right between us, to prove how devoted I was to saving our marriage, he was just going to throw it all away on some tawdry fling. But then James dropped a bombshell that shattered me to my core. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I wanted you to feel the same pain I felt when you cheated on me." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. All my grand romantic gestures, all the love notes and lingerie, James hadn't seen them as genuine attempts to reconcile. He viewed them as empty, selfish acts from a guilty conscience. My efforts to become the perfect wife hadn't been perceived as heartfelt, just a sad, desperate ploy to assuage my own guilt over the affair. Every meal I'd cooked, every sweet nothing I'd whispered, it had all been tainted in James's eyes. I realized then that no matter how hard I tried, how much I contorted myself into this idealized version of the spouse, it would never be enough. As much as it killed me, I had to accept that my selfish actions of the affair, and then my attempts to fix things on my terms, had permanently fractured the love James and I once shared. I didn't know if there was any coming back from that. Our marriage hung by a thread, a tenuous thing that could unravel with the slightest wrong move. All I could do was desperately cling to those frayed edges, praying they wouldn't slip through my fingers entirely. We started fighting constantly after that. Every little thing would set one of us off, dredging up old hurts and reopening still raw wounds. The tension in our home was suffocating. We could barely stand to be in the same room together. Then one night, after yet another heated argument about God knows what, James just shut down. He went completely cold and emotionless. That's when he said the words I'll never forget. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. I can't live like this, constantly at war, feeling like a stranger in my own home, with my own wife." It was like he'd just given up, thrown in the towel on our entire marriage. He looked at me with this sadness, but also resignation, like he finally accepted that we were too broken to fix. "The woman I married, the woman I loved more than life itself, she's gone. You've changed into someone I don't even recognize anymore." I begged and pleaded for him to give us another chance, to go to counseling, to do whatever it took. But he was resolute. "It's too late," he said. "We're too far gone." And just like that, it was over. The life we'd spent a decade building, the dreams we'd shared, the family we'd planned, all of it, crumbling into rubble at our feet. As I watched James pack a bag and walk out the door that night, I felt like a piece of my soul had been ripped away. How did we go from being so deliriously happy to this? James said he had already started looking for a new place to live, that he needed to get out of the house, to get away from the constant reminders of my betrayal. He said it was the only way he could ever hope to heal and move on. Just like that, it was over. The days and weeks that followed were a numbing blur of grief and recrimination. I'd wake up hoping it had all been a horrible nightmare, only to be crushed anew by James's absence. His toothbrush gone from the holder. His slippers no longer by the door. No more sounds of him pottering around in the mornings before work. I missed everything about him, his laugh, his smell, the way he'd gather me into those big bear hugs that made me feel so safe and loved. Longing for him was like a physical ache, a gaping hole in my chest that couldn't be filled. But worst of all was the suffocating guilt and shame. How could I have thrown away the best thing in my life over some cheap thrill? James had been nothing but loving and devoted, and I'd repaid him with the ultimate betrayal. I hated myself for what I'd done, for the pain I'd caused him. As I existed in that waking nightmare of loss and regret, I realized there are some things that can never be undone, no matter how desperately you might wish it. My actions had irrevocably altered the course of our lives, and I had no one to blame but myself. After James left, taking all his things and what felt like my entire world with him, I was consumed by doubt. Had there ever really been a chance for us to work through this? Or was our marriage doomed the second I stepped out on him? I replayed every moment over and over in my head, torturing myself. When I first confessed the affair, was the devastation in his eyes just the initial shock? Or had I already lost him in that instant? Those first few weeks of me trying so hard, cooking, leaving notes, dressing up, was I just clinging to false hope? Had James already checked out emotionally, just going through the motions? And when he started staying late, talking to that other woman, was that his way of getting back at me? Of seeking some twisted revenge? Or had he simply fallen out of love and moved on without me realizing it? Maybe I'm just fooling myself, telling myself there was a chance we could have made it work if I'd done things differently. If I hadn't pushed so hard, if I'd given him space, if I'd suggested counseling sooner. But what if the truth is, once the trust was broken, once I shattered those sacred vows, there was no coming back from it? James said I'd become a stranger to him. So maybe, in a way, I killed our marriage the night I stepped out on him. Maybe everything after that was just prolonging the inevitable. Two strangers going through the motions, playing parts in a relationship that no longer existed. I'll never really know if we could have found our way back to each other. Part of me wants to believe there was a path, that if we'd both tried harder, been more open and vulnerable, we could have rebuilt what was broken. But the other part of me knows that some things, once broken, can never be fully repaired. All I'm left with now is this aching doubt, this nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, I threw away the best thing I ever had for a brief moment of selfish pleasure. And I'll never forgive myself for that. I never should have gotten so close to Mark in the first place. Those first innocent flirtations should have been a giant red flag that I was handing down a dangerous path. But I ignored them all, caught up in the intoxicating thrill of the forbidden. And then once the affair started, I let it drag on for far too long. Every lie, every deception, every betrayal of James' trust just dug me deeper into a hole I could never crawl out of. I told myself I would end it soon, that it was just a temporary lapse in judgment. But the longer it went on, the harder it became to imagine life without Mark. Until finally, the truth came exploding out and shattered everything in its wake. Even after I confessed, I made mistake after mistake in my desperate attempts to fix things with James. The ridiculous lingerie, the cutesy notes, the over-the-top home-cooked meals, it all just made me look pathetic and insincere. James could see right through my transparent efforts to be the perfect wife. I should have been having honest conversations with him, going to counseling, doing the real work to rebuild the trust one had demolished. Instead, I took the coward's way out and tried for some grand romantic gesture to erase all the pain I had caused. As if dressing up like a 1950s housewife could just make all my transgressions disappear in a puff of smoke. I cringe now thinking about how naive and selfish I was, putting on that act for my own benefit instead of truly listening to James and giving him the space and respect he deserved. No wonder he grew to resent me so deeply. My biggest regret is that I didn't appreciate what I had until it was gone. James was the most loyal, loving partner a woman could ever hope for. And I threw all of that away for what? A cheap thrill? A fleeting echo of passion? If I could go back, I would hold on to him and never let go. I would make him feel cherished and adored every single day, the way he deserved. I would remind myself constantly how lucky I was to have found my soulmate. But it's too late for what ifs and I'll nevers. All I'm left with now is this hollow ache in my heart where James used to be. I have no one to blame but myself for losing the best thing that ever happened to me. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more. Speaking of more, there are more stories of this type here on the channel, and one of them is now appearing on your screen. Click and you'll go straight to the video.